here it is. This is the S&D practice soldering board from AliExpress. Got it for about $2 based off of the NE555 IC. You can see that the entire board looks like solder mounted devices, as the name implies, or I should say on the name soldering practice instead, because they're missing a P for some reason. But as you can see, it's pretty clean. It certainly looks a bit daunting, but nothing out of the ordinary, no curveballs here. Just a couple of ICs, some resistors, capacitors, diodes, and some transistors. Let's get started here on the resistors of the 1206 type. Now these are fairly easy to solder on the board, as they are decent size, no issue grabbing them with the tweezers. Here we go with the capacitors next. Looks like they're the 0805 type, a little bit smaller. I would say maybe about half as small as the 1206s, but still fairly easy to get them on. Again, soldering one side, now some resistors, same exact thing. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting. We have the 0603 resistors and capacitors, which are significantly smaller than the 1206s. I wouldn't say they're that much more difficult, but it is difficult holding them with the tweezers, as you'll see right here. Slowing up a little bit just so I can demonstrate the tiniest ones, which are the 0402 type SMD package type resistors that we have here. Now I'm putting a little bit of flux on the footprints on here and the pads, just so that the solder flows a little bit better onto the pad itself. And now, just to give you an idea of how small these are, you could probably fit about 5 of these into a grain of rice. I mean, compared to a grain of rice, these things are very, very small. Now in this close-up, you can see how difficult it is just to solder the pads on these tiny footprints for the resistors. You can see my solder tip just slip away from me and just not get a good solder point on there. But once you get the technique down, it's pretty straightforward. So now moving on to the center of the PCB board, we have the ring of LEDs with each corresponding resistor, all of which being the 1206 sizing SMD. Not difficult, just a little bit annoying having to twist the stand. We're going to move to the exterior of the ring. On each corner seems to be another set of LEDs all around with their own corresponding resistors, and of course the transistors. I believe they're J3Y transistors on there. Now the center diodes, both the LED and a couple more resistors and capacitors. These diodes were a little bit tricky because they're rounded on the ends and they kept rolling away. I couldn't secure them initially, but finally got them on there with just a little bit of solder. Now I'm just soldering the other side just to get a good connection on there, and we'll be ready to move over to the ICs. Now the ICs are the largest components on here. We have two. We have a 555 IC, which is quite infamous, of course. Many of you know it already. And a looks like a CD4017 CMOS decade counter and divider for the sequencing of the LEDs flashing around. The 555 will give, I guess you can say, a timer or a clock to the CMOS counter, and that's what will make the LEDs flash. Now, putting these on is at first difficult if you're ever trying it first, because it's hard to align all the pins directly onto the footprint on top. The way I've seen many do it, and the way that I personally do it, is you tack on one pin on any given corner, and from that one pin align the rest of the pins on there so they kind of just sit on there straight, and then hit the other corner. Once you have both corners soldered it through, then it becomes very easy to solder the rest of the pins. Now here I'm just aligning the pins themselves, so you can nudge it a little bit, but you gotta be gentle, because if you nudge it too much, it'll bend the pin, and sometimes these pins can break. something you want to watch out for. So try to get it right or pass a line on the first try. Now the 555 chip is proper. Now we're going to move over to the CMOS counter. Alright, so we have one pin on there, and the other corner, which we'll do in just a second. Now securing the top right pin on the larger IC. Now it's locked in, and coming back to the 555 IC, both of them are secured. Now we're going to move on to soldering the rest of the pins on these two ICs. Now to do this, we're going to use a little bit of flux. Flux allows the solder to flow a lot easier onto the pads along with the pins themselves. Now you can go down the line with a good amount of solder and they will free flow into their designated footprints on the pins, and makes life a lot easier instead of doing it without any flux. It's the go-to method, especially if you are soldering the 100 pin SMD ICs, which can be difficult if not impossible to do it without flux. Of course, you can use the soldering paste and heating board, of course, but if you want to do it by hand, you gotta use the flux. So you can see I'm just brushing the soldering tip down the line and outwards so that the pins do not conjoin with the solder. You could always push the pins with a pair of tweezers just to make sure they're secure. However, you do run the risk of bending them. You got to do it very gently, and if there is some wiggle to the pin itself, then it's not properly adhered. These ICs are fairly large, and their pins are fairly large, so you can see if they're dislodged or not. But again, when you're dealing with the much smaller pins, such as those with the 100 pin ICs, it's very difficult to see it with the naked eye. You usually have to use a microscope camera to confirm that they're not loose. But there it is. They're all set. Now we're just going to clean it a little bit. Now here is just a alcohol wipe, essentially. The only thing that would really get that flux off. Unfortunately, it leaves a lot of residue like the strings on there. Now I've also used the sponges, I believe what they are, but they don't do that good of a cleaning even with isopropyl alcohol. So I stick to these prep pads. And here it is, the completed SMD soldering rackus board from AliExpress. After arduous soldering of all the tiny components on here, we're ready to power this board with 5 volts of power. It works. You can see the LED spinning in the circle on the ring. You can see the flashing on each corner and the center one as well, albeit very fast. This actually can be adjusted by changing some resistors on the 555 IC. Maybe I'll make another video of explaining how that works. Very infamous, as again, I'm sure many of you know, but nice little chip to do fun things with. If you enjoyed seeing this come together as much as I did, hit that like button and that subscribe button. I'll be making a lot more videos with fun projects that you can do yourself at home, along with all the files and schematics that you'll need to make it happen. But stay tuned, a lot of cool stuff coming your way. See you next time.